Chapter 5. Sleeping Shion. Who's there? I know you. I see you in my dreams every night. I've been dreaming about you for a long time. Are you me? Are you me when I was human? Me? Roxas? No, that's not right. Who are you? Slowly, Roxas sat up and shook his head. He didn't quite feel all the way awake. He knew he'd been dreaming but couldn't remember what. Although, that was nothing new. Neither was the grogginess, like he'd hardly slept at all. Why couldn't he ever remember the dreams? Or was it normal to forget your dreams when you were awake? He didn't really know. Roxas clambered out of bed, put on a fresh cloak, and headed for the lobby as usual. When he got there, Luxord greeted him. The part was a break from the routine. That part was a break from the routine.
How's the game been treating you, Roxas?
Okay, I guess. He wasn't quite sure how to reply. He hardly ever talked to Luxord.
I'm told Sykes shuffled us together for today's mission. We'll make a decent team, I wager.
Sure. Roxas was fairly certain he hadn't been on a mission with him before.
By the way, did you hear what happened to Shion?
That was not a topic Roxas had been expecting to confront. Startled, he looked up. Wait, something happened to Shion?
She failed a mission, and now she's fallen asleep, Luxord went on. Can't win them all, I suppose.
Shion? It looks like Luxord had more to say, but Roxas didn't wait to hear it. He left the lobby at a run. This was the second time Shion had fallen into a deep sleep. Was she sick? Roxas's chest ached with anxiety. Sykes didn't let him get far.
And where do you think you're going, Roxas?
He stopped short and turned. To see Shion.
What about your mission?
Don't worry, I'll do it. Obviously I'm not skipping work, Roxas thought, but right now...
There's nothing you can do even if you do go. Shion will not wake up.
That's not the point, Roxas snapped. I should still be with her. Sykes didn't have to talk that way. Maybe Roxas wouldn't be able to do anything besides look in on her. That didn't matter. He wanted to see how she was. Why was Sykes being so obtuse? There were 100 things he wanted to say, but the words wouldn't come out. Sykes sounded vaguely disgusted.
What do you care for a broken, defective failure?
Don't call her that! Roxas stalked up to him, glaring furiously.
I'll call that thing whatever I want. How we deal with Shion is no business of yours.
I don't remember asking you, Roxas retorted.
Look at you.
Sykes shook his head faintly.
All up in arms over a creature that shouldn't exist.
What, like a nobody? We're all nobodies. Why won't Sykes understand? It's because he's a nobody, but so am I.
You have nothing to worry about,
said Sykes.
Shion may be beyond repair, but that does not affect your standing with us.
You're like a broken record, Roxas fumed. I'll do my mission later. He turned his back on Sykes and sprinted away. Once he'd caught his breath, Roxas opened the door to Shion's room. It was identical to his own room, furnished with only a bed and a closet, but somehow it felt chilly. He shivered. She was definitely asleep, but he went to the bed and murmured her name. Shion. Of course, she didn't reply. Her slumber was so deep and quiet that for a moment, Roxas doubted she was breathing. Unnerved, he reached out and held his hand close to her mouth. Oh, good. I can feel it. He pulled his hand back, clenching it tight. Why did Sykes have to say those things? Defective, failure. Sykes is so much more harsh with Shion than with me. I have no idea what's going through his head. Roxas reached into his pocket for a seashell. It was one of the shells Shion had given him. There were many more still in his room. The seashells are a promise. But when had he made a promise with Shion? He thought he would have remembered it all, and yet the memory just wasn't there. Roxas set the seashell on her pillow and left for work. Axel made it to the gray area just as Roxas was stepping into the corridors of darkness. Luxord was right behind him.
Now there's an odd couple. So, Sykes, what am I doing to... Oh boy, awfully early for such a bad mood, don't you think?
Sykes had whirled to face him with a rather pronounced scowl.
Nobodies do not have moods to be ruined, he said at length. Well, sure, technically.
Of course, with no hearts, they couldn't have moods or fits of temper. If something went frustratingly awry, their faces might reveal shadows of remembered emotion, no more. Still, for a remembered shadow, that was a mean glower on Ceyx's face.
Did I miss something?
Axel wondered.
Shion has collapsed again.
Now Axel frowned. He sure had missed something.
Did she get hurt or what?
No, Ceyx replied, any hint of expression vanishing from his face.
It's just that the failure was functioning better than expected until recently.
The failure? Is that what we're calling her now? Ceyx's estimation of Shion seemed to have plummeted lower than ever. True, she'd lost badly against the organization imposter, but that was Riku. Defeat was all but inevitable against him. Failing to carry out a mission was unacceptable, of course, but not impossible. She could always challenge Riku again. If the mission was so unsuited to her in the first place, though, Ceyx ought to know better as the one in charge of handing out assignments. And Axel was beginning to suspect at least some of the blame lay with him. Ceyx held some particular grudge against Shion.
Never mind that. Your mission is to continue searching for Riku.
Sure, gotcha.
I do need you to find him sometime soon.
Well, I'm sure he'll be in the last place I look.
Get going.
Yeah. Axel muttered, already walking away. He glanced back at Ceyx.
Hey, so our plan's making progress, right? Just as long as you don't do anything foolish.
Axel shrugged at the touchy warning and left the castle. The mission complete, Roxas went to the usual spot to watch the sunset over ice cream. As he was squinting against the brilliance, Axel came up behind him and took his own customary seat. Roxas gave him a glance, but soon turned back to the sunset.
So, something happened to Shion.
Hugging one knee to his chest, Axel answered him.
Yeah, Ceyx told me this morning.
Roxas slumped over. Why does he hate her so much? Axel was a bit taken aback. Out of habit, nobodies might say they liked or hated things, but none of them really had those emotions, not the way Roxas meant.
What do you mean by that?
Axel laughed.
You just can't stop talking like a real person, can you?
Then Roxas turned to him. What did I say? He seemed uncertain, his gaze wandering, and he hung his head again. I don't know how real people talk, he mumbled.
Roxas must feel like he doesn't know anything,
Axel thought.
Well, I don't have the best handle on things myself, but I'm slightly less clueless.
He shifted, relaxing his legs.
Are you that worried over Shion?
It's just, when I saw her lying there, she was so quiet. It made me think she might never wake up. Roxas's voice was hushed with something very like fear.
I'm sure she's fine.
The best Axel could offer was empty words of comfort. Roxas closed his eyes for a moment, as if he had to say something terribly important, and took a breath that he let out in a sigh.
Ceyx called her defective.
Axel sighed too. He had his doubts that Ceyx realized just how special Roxas and Shion were, how they seemed to process things with an emotional quality that none of the other nobodies had. Speak in those cold, dispassionate terms to one of them, and it would provoke the opposite reaction, just as if they had hearts. But whether they were unknowingly reliving moments from when they were human, or whether it was something unique to them, Axel couldn't have said. Roxas was the nobody of the hero of light, while Shion, he suspected, had something to do with the same person. Maybe that made them even more special than even he knew. Ceyx didn't understand that. Despite the lack of a heart, he could imagine what it was like to have emotional responses based on what he remembered from his human life. And he must be able to remember how much trouble it was. Since he was already overthinking things, though, Axel had to wonder if he wasn't letting Roxas or Shion have too much influence on him. All these friends and promises were taking over his life. Almost as if he rejected his identity as a nobody. That would definitely be considered abnormal for a member of Organization 13.
Well, I'm probably a lot more defective than she is,
Axel admitted, almost to himself, and looked at Roxas. Deep in thought, Roxas sat there and stared at nothing. Roxas and Shion were always so dutiful, loyal. Axel was the failure. And not just because he shirked missions. He was always plotting against the organization along with Ceyx. The clock tower's bells chimed the hour. A train sped away in the distance. I think maybe Sykes knows something about her. About why Shion and I are special nobodies, said Roxas.
Well, sure. If it's gonna keep you up at night,
Axel sighed.
I could ask him for you.
Really? Roxas grinned at that, not a nobody-like reaction by any means. Axel shrugged and eyed him with a wry smile.
Hey, calm down. I'll ask, but don't get your hopes up. He's not the best at giving straight answers.
But you still got a way better chance. Roxas still sounded excited.
I'll give you that,
said Axel, avoiding a concrete reply. Roxas was special among nobodies, no question, and perhaps Shion too. Axel gazed out at the sunset, as red as ever. That color still looked the same to him now as it had when he was human. Some things didn't change, even when you became a nobody. I hope Shion wakes up soon, Roxas murmured.
That would be nice, Axel thought. If only the three of us could just waste our time talking and laughing together again.
As soon as he returned to the castle, Axel went to call on Sykes. There were other things besides Shion that he wanted to discuss. Well, to be more precise, there were plenty of other things he needed to bring up. They hadn't been speaking much.
It's messed up, Axel thought. Why am I trying to put Sykes in charge of the organization? Well, this is a rare occasion. What's that supposed to mean?
Sykes swiveled his chair around. His room was in the depths of the castle, although it was more like an office, overflowing with documents and materials.
It means you hardly ever come looking for me these days. So, I've got something to discuss with you for a change.
Very funny, Sykes remarked flatly. He was the one being sarcastic. He never spoke like that in front of any of the other members. Only Axel. It was something that originated in the relationship they'd had as humans.
Is this about the defective thing in our midst? Asked Sykes. Am I that easy to read?
Axel shrugged.
Yes, because you're completely guileless. You always were. Excuse me? Were you always such a jerk?
Axel retorted, taking a seat on a shelf across from Sykes.
Don't sit on that. Then put another chair in here.
He let his legs swing the way he would sit at the usual spot.
Somehow, I doubt that would stop you,
said Sykes.
Anyway, I'm not going to talk to you about it. Hey, she has a name, you know. I told you to stay out of this.
Sykes swiveled in his chair, turning his back on Axel to end the conversation.
Well, I can't. I need to know what the deal with Shion is.
Axel got up and grabbed Sykes' shoulder, peering into his face.
So, give me a straight answer for once. Just like you were always honest with me. Oh, so it's tit for tat, huh?
Caught out, Axel grimaced with a short laugh. Maybe they'd both been less forthcoming with each other lately, and he was too forthcoming with Roxas and Shion.
Seriously though, Sykes.
But Sykes barely spared him a glance and pushed Axel's hand from his shoulder.
Shion is not qualified to be counted among us.
Chilled by the flat rejection in that low voice, Axel stepped back.
Not qualified? How?
Sykes still didn't look at him.
See for yourself. I have nothing more to tell you.
If Sykes was saying that, he probably meant it. Axel stared at the stubborn set of his shoulders. Both of them had changed.
Wonder which one of us is more different now,
Axel said under his breath. Just for an instant, he saw a twitch in Sykes' shoulders, but he wasn't about to hold his breath for more. Axel showed himself out. In the morning, Axel headed toward the lobby a bit earlier than usual. He staked out the corridor leading in, waiting for Roxas where Sykes wouldn't interrupt them. Finally, Roxas came meandering in, blinking sleepily as ever.
Hey, Roxas,
Axel called. The younger boy immediately perked up and hurried over. Did you find out anything about Shion? He asked enthusiastically.
Axel nodded. I talked to Sykes.
Really? What'd he say? Roxas's face was lit up with hope, but...
Well, nothing. He faltered. Sorry, his lips were sealed.
He had been thinking all night about how to tell Roxas, and the conclusion he arrived at was not to tell the truth at all. If he just repeated what Sykes said to him, Roxas would only have more questions to worry about. Oh! Roxas practically wilted in front of him. Axel couldn't help himself from trying to alleviate the disappointment.
Well, he did say he'd take back calling her defective if she proves herself more capable going forward. I guess this is one lie leading to another,
he chided himself, and yet he kept going.
So, until she wakes up, the best thing you can do is to just keep up the good work yourself.
Roxas's smile only made Axel's guilt worse, and now he suspected he trapped himself into telling Roxas even more lies. I will! Thanks, Axel! That's great! Roxas beamed with gratitude, and he entered the lobby with a spring in his step.
I'm sorry.
Axel mumbled, disconsolately scratching the back of his head as Roxas walked away. That day's heartless extermination took Roxas to another world he'd never visited before. He emerged on a small island. So, this is Neverland? Most of what he saw was blue, not sky blue, but ocean blue. The air had an intriguing scent, and he breathed it in as deeply as he could. The smell. He could hear the distant shrieking of seagulls. He began walking and noticed another figure just in time to hide behind a rock.
Quickly now, Smee, put your back into it.
Aye, aye, Captain Hook. Roxas peeked out to see a stout old man with a bulbous nose driving a shovel into the earth. That had to be Smee. The other man nearby was most likely Captain Hook, sporting an impressive mustache and an even more impressive hat.
There's no mistaking it this time. The treasure is here, I'm certain of it.
Hook held several pieces of aging parchment. That'll be a nice change from the last dozen, commented Smee, busily digging another hole. But what a stroke of luck you had finding so many treasure maps at once, sir. So those papers were treasure maps.
Heh, some poor fool must be cursing himself for losing 'em. But enough blabbering, Mr. Smee. Don't stop digging until you find that treasure.
Aye, aye, sir. The dirt flew as Smee kept at it, and then he stopped. Captain! Captain! I've struck something!
Oh?
Smee hoisted up a sizable wooden box, unmistakably a treasure chest.
Aha! What have we here? Gold? Jewels? Gold and jewels?
Hook opened the chest to find nothing. It was empty.
Blast! Another dead end?
Well, don't you worry, Captain. We've still got a pile of other maps, too. Hook interrupted Smee with a snarl of frustration.
Confound it! If we don't find the right one soon, someone else could walk off with me treasure.
Something felt off about this, in Roxas's opinion.
That gold will be mine. No one else can have it.
Hook stamped his foot, and for a strange moment, some kind of dark mist enveloped him. What was that? Captain? Smee said uncertainly. He must have noticed it too. And then, as if the mist had summoned it, a Heartless appeared.
Gah!
Cried Hook.
More Heartless! Run, Smee!
Eek! Aye, aye, sir! Hook and Smee were running toward Roxas, but they passed him by without even seeing him. Now he wouldn't have to reveal himself to take out the target. Roxas charged at the creature creeping around the treasure chest with his keyblade. A dream. That's right. I'm dreaming. I know this is just a dream, so I don't have to be so scared. After all that, Roxas figured that if he followed those two, he might run into more Heartless. After finishing off the one at the empty treasure chest, he headed after Hook and Smee. But before he could find them, something small and sparkly flew up into his face. Whoa! It was a girl. A very tiny girl, no bigger than his hand, with fluttering wings at her back. Her name was Tinkerbell, but she had no way to tell him that. She seemed about to dart away, but after a considering stare, she circled him a few times and came to a stop, hovering in front of his eyes. Can I help you? Roxas asked. Tinkerbell replied with a great deal of gesticulating, clearly trying to tell him something. She pointed with both her slender arms to a ship anchored out on the water. You want me to go to that ship? She nodded emphatically. But how? It's too far. He had no way of getting all the way over there. He doubted even the corridors of darkness would work for that. I'd never make it unless I could fly or something. Huh? She gestured and twirled, circling him again to scatter glittering dust all over him. Hey, what is this stuff? It's glowing. Roxas blinked, bewildered, and Tinkerbell pointed once more. Off the island's rocky edge, across from the water, a dead end for him. You want me to jump? Tinkerbell nodded. Wait, are you saying I can fly? Again, she nodded. Well, alright. I believe you. Roxas took a step toward the edge of the cliff and cast himself off. Just as he was sure he'd plunged straight into the ground, he felt himself float. He was rising, free of gravity. I did it! I can fly! It was such an odd sensation, a little like when he'd looked at the ocean, but not quite the same. This had to be his first time flying, and yet he felt like he'd done it before. Roxas whirled and looped and unpaused midair. That sparkling dust was bright all around him. Fly! Just believe, and you can do it. Who told me that? If I keep believing, we'll meet again. I know we will. Who made that promise? I can hear the ocean. Where is it coming from? I can't wait to see you. There's so much I want to tell you. Tell who? Who is it I want to talk to so badly? Yet again, Axel found not a hint of a clue that might lead him to Riku. There was nothing, not even the vaguest rumor, and he began to think he must be somewhere beyond their reach. So what was the point of searching aimlessly like that? He called it off early and headed for the clock tower. To his surprise, Roxas had beaten him to it.
Hey, done already?
Yep. Roxas was strangely cheerful. Was it still the lie Axel had told him that morning? Just as Axel was about to sit beside him, Roxas blurted out an explanation. Axel, you're not going to believe this. I flew today. He was right. That did sound a little out there. Axel gave him a serious look.
You did what now?
I flew like a bird. Well, not quite like a bird. I'm not really sure how, but I did it.
That sounds pretty neat, Axel replied, though he wasn't sure why it merited that much excitement. Maybe it was lost on him because he'd never done any flying himself. But Roxas's expression as he tried to describe it was as bright as Axel had ever seen. It was better than neat. It was amazing. I've been waiting all day to tell you. Roxas gazed out at the sky, as if he was imagining himself soaring off the clock tower right now. The breeze ruffled his bangs. And it felt so familiar somehow, like I've done it before, like a good memory. Isn't that weird? Like a good memory. It was the first time Axel had heard Roxas describe anything that way. Then, as if the fever of his enthusiasm had broken, Roxas fell into another of his pensive moods. I wish Shion would wake up, so I could tell her too. Who is it? Who's calling me? What? Roxas was here, but he wasn't the one she'd heard calling to her. Shion, good morning. Oh, hi. Shion blinked and sat up. You startled me. You woke up so suddenly. Sorry. She looked down apologetically and saw a pile of seashells beside her. Oh, did you bring me these? She picked one up and held it to her ear. Maybe the ocean waves in her ears really had been seashells the whole time. Can you hear it? Asked Roxas. Yeah, the sound of the waves. But why? Why did that sound give her such a strange feeling? She didn't know when she'd closed her eyes, but she opened them again and asked Roxas, how long was I asleep? About 20 days. That long? Shion knew she'd been sleeping for some time. She just hadn't expected to hear such a high number. Anyway, she couldn't even remember why she'd fallen into such a deep sleep. No, she fainted. The last thing she could recall was thinking, I won't lose to him. I won't let Riku beat me. But why had she collapsed like that? Yeah, it was a while, said Roxas. Me and Axel were getting worried. I'm sorry I made you worried. It bothered her that she'd missed almost 3 weeks of action, but not as much as realizing she'd left Roxas and Axel to worry about her for so long. Something painfully tight clenched in her chest. Strange, huh? We don't even have hearts to feel with. Why does it hurt so much if I have no heart? But she knew no one had an answer. Shion looked up at Roxas. Don't you have work today? Huh? Oh, I'm about to head out. I want to go with you, she told him with no uncertain terms. A slight frown of concern came to his face. Don't you need some more rest? Maybe he was still worried, but she wanted to get going. I'll be fine. Come on, let me tag along. Roxas took a few reluctant moments before giving in. All right. Shion immediately jumped out of bed.
Now they just had to persuade Cyax. They discussed it briefly and stopped their superior just outside the lobby. Cyax! He glanced sidelong at Shion. Well, well, look who's awake. She faced him directly and took a deep breath. I want to go with Roxas on his mission today. 2 of us can gather more hearts, right? Cyax seemed to consider it briefly. You shouldn't be up and about yet. That was not a reply she'd anticipated. He sounded, well, worried was the wrong word, but at least somewhat concerned for her health as a member of the organization. As she tried to formulate a response, Axel showed up. Oh, hey Shion, finally awake. Morning, Axel. A smile came to her face as she turned to him. He would help them out. Roxas will team up with Axel today, as scheduled, Cyax told Shion. I'm afraid I didn't know you'd be available. Apparently, he was also relieved at Axel's interruption. Let me go too, Shion entreated. I could use the exercise. A pause turned into a silence just slightly too long. What's the problem? She'll have me looking after her too, Axel finally said. Still, Cyax made no reply. He and Axel appeared to be in a staring contest, and not an entirely friendly one. It made Shion nervous. Fine. Go if you're so determined, Cyax capitulated. He retreated to his post in the lobby. The other 3 watched him go and exchanged glances, then broke into grins. This would be their first mission as a trio. The mission was in Twilight Town, the home of their usual spot. This should be fun, huh? We're tripling up, Shion giggled. Roxas grinned back, probably for the first time in the organization. Come on, guys, it's a mission, not a game. Axel chided them half-heartedly. He was right, though. This was work. Yeah. Still, it's nice to be back. Axel gave her another warning, seriously this time. Just don't push it, okay? I know, Shion nodded. Thanks. She wouldn't go too hard. If she passed out again, she'd lose everything for sure. But that wouldn't happen, not with both Roxas and Axel to help. If anything went badly, she knew they would have her back. So, the mission, eliminate the giant heartless of the day. Axel rubbed the back of his neck. Sounds like a tough one. We know it's big. At least that'll make it easy to guess where it'll appear, said Roxas. I'm guessing in the Sandlot or the Station Plaza. Sounds good to me, Shion agreed. There were some large open areas at the tram common, and in front of the haunted mansion too, but chances were good a giant heartless would try one of the other 2 places first. Well, let's take it out and have ourselves some ice cream. Roxas set off with purpose. Shion wasn't far behind. Yeah, and we're already in Twilight Town. It'll be right there once we're done. You're not wrong, but don't let your guard down, Axel told them, bringing up the rear. Quit being such a worrywart, Axel. Maybe I could if you 2 would quit giving me so much to worry about, he retorted. Shion and Roxas exchanged a look and laughed. So, where are we headed first? Axel asked. Station Plaza, Roxas replied. Any particular reason? We want to be able to get back to the tram common to get ice cream, right? Huh? Axel wasn't following. So we'll start at the farthest point away from the tram common and work our way toward it. That'll make it easier once we're done. That's so smart, Roxas, Shion exclaimed. It is, Axel mumbled. Axel isn't getting it, she thought. But that doesn't really matter. Working together as a trio here in Twilight Town, it just makes things more fun. But then, it happened as soon as she stepped into the Station Plaza. The world tilted. Everything spun and swam and went dark. What's happening? What is this? I don't know. Promise. Who are you? It's my lucky charm, so you have to bring it back to me. Lucky charm? The seashells? Shion! That's Roxas. I can hear his voice. What's happening to me? Axel caught her just before she hit the ground. Shion! Cried Roxas, and a growl came from behind him. That would be their target. He whirled around. I've got Shion, Axel called to him. You take care of that thing. Right! Roxas nodded, summoning the Keyblade to his hand as he charged the Heartless. Once Roxas had it under control, Axel hoisted up Shion and darted toward the shelter of the station in the giant Heartless's blind spot. Shion! He called her name, gently setting her down, but she was unresponsive. He'd been so careless. He had no idea exactly why Shion seemed to collapse so often, but he knew that she did, so why would he let her go on a mission immediately after she started to recover? As he berated himself, something occurred to him. Sykes kept telling him not to concern himself too deeply, but the warning could be interpreted another way. Don't ask questions. I have no intention of indulging anything more to you about Shion. So the only thing to do was to find answers for himself. She stirred in his arms. Shion? An instant later, he saw Roxas deal the finishing blow to the giant Heartless. The heart it released vanished into the sky. Then Shion uttered a weak murmur. Sora. Axel stared down at her, not sure if he'd heard correctly. Sora? How did Shion know that name? Shion! Roxas came running to them and peered at her anxiously. It's okay, she's not hurt, said Axel. But Axel! Roxas was only going to fret more. Axel stood up with her in his arms. Let's just get back. He didn't give Roxas a moment to argue before he set off. They returned to the silent halls of the vast castle. Axel was carrying Shion with Roxas glued to his side. Her face was so pale it seemed translucent, not a comforting sight. Did it break again? That didn't take long. Only Sykes would make such a callous remark. Rage surged up in Roxas, and he spun around. Don't call her an it! He was on the verge of throwing a punch, but Axel stepped in between them, still holding the unconscious Shion. He didn't look at Sykes, but he did have one thing to say. Keep your mouth shut. Roxas had never heard him speak so coldly to anyone before. Sykes made no reply. He spent one more moment glaring daggers at Sykes before following Axel out of the room. Axel! What? Was it okay to talk to him like that? Talk to him how? Axel's voice sounded just a bit lower than usual. I mean, you and Sykes are usually on pretty good terms, right? Not that good, but I'm not the one who was about to deck him. Well, yeah, but... Something just felt wrong about it. Axel was putting distance between himself and Sykes, just like Shion did with him. And not just that. Open the door, would you? Said Axel, stopping outside Shion's room. Oh, right. Roxas fumbled to open it, and there was her room. No different than it was this morning. Axel set her down softly on the bed. She groaned. Maybe she wasn't quite unconscious after all. Axel watched her carefully. Are you worried about her too, Axel? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Axel eyed him in mild surprise. Of course I am. But his voice was still oddly low. Running into Sykes had brought out a different side of him, and that side was a little scary. This just doesn't seem like you, said Roxas. What do you mean? Roxas found he couldn't quite put the answer into words. What can I say? You don't like things to be complicated. That was the best he could do. It wasn't quite right either, but he didn't know how to describe this. As he was trying to find the words for another attempt, Axel spoke instead. Look, Roxas, why do you think the three of us meet up to have ice cream every day in the same spot? Huh? Roxas couldn't tell where this was going. It's not like I have to. If you think about it, it's just one more chore on the pile, right? From that angle, it did seem like a chore, except it wasn't a chore. It was fun, having ice cream together after work. That was why they went up to meet. What made it so fun, though? You want to know? Roxas quietly waited for the answer. It's because you two are my best friends. Axel had said before that he didn't have a best friend. Roxas remembered. But now it's us? Got it memorized? A smile played at the corners of Axel's mouth. The three of us, we're inseparable. You're my best friends. Roxas felt a grin come to his face. Yeah, I guess we are. It was Shion, awake, still lying down, but laughing. Thanks, Axel. You're so sweet. Axel sheepishly scratched the back of his head. Feeling any better? Asked Roxas. Shion nodded, brushing off his concern. I just got a little dizzy. Sorry for worrying you. Man, don't scare us like that, Axel complained. I'll try not to.
You stay in bed, okay? Take it easy.
I will, she said meekly and smiled at them. Thanks, guys. Roxas and Axel glanced at each other. She might have to stay off her feet for a while, but she was okay. The white room bore a slight resemblance to the chambers of Castle Oblivion. This was her first time taking out the sketchbook since coming here to the mansion. Nominee drew her pictures in no particular hurry. First, she drew a blonde boy in a black cloak, then a red-haired boy, taller, somewhat older, and one more figure, a girl in a black cloak. As Nominee tried to fill in the girl's face, her hand paused. How long had Nominee known about her? She had only just recently realized that the girl was a special nobody, but beyond that, she knew almost nothing. This girl, what was she?